what you need and what you require for a marriage that you learn what you need is that communication, and so important, that honesty, and that
Right.
that ability to really say what you need to your spouse, or really say what you're feeling. It changes the game. It like totally changes everything. You're not guessing. There's no guesswork. You're not like resorting to statistics about men and women.
So listen to that. Welcome back to another episode of Strictly Outside the Lines. Today, we will be talking to Avichail Yachnes. Avichail is married to Rivka and currently lives in Kew Garden Hills, Queens. By day, he works at Center's business office in the Bronx, but by night, he's a songwriter, podcaster, videographer, producer, creator, and husband. Avichail, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Baruch.
It's really great to have you here. I do appreciate you taking the time, especially for today's topic, which we are in honor of and in celebration of the upcoming date on the calendar for this Wednesday, actually, when this will be released, it's known as Tu B'Av, the 15th of the Hebrew month of Av, which celebrates, really, it's a day of celebration of marriage and dating. It was kind of a day in the calendar where all the Jewish singles would get together. So the topic today is really going to be about dating and marriage. Before we dive into that, I want to point out something and acknowledge something here about your bio. With other people that I've interviewed and had on as guests, oftentimes they come with these vibrant bios that, scream their accolades and all that they've done with their life. And yours, when I asked you for your bio, is very short, sweet, simple, to the point. But I think it really highlights kind of your character and how I know you. Like, what really struck me is you're just present. Like, there's no big business title. There's none of these. It's just you're somebody who is very present. When you're at work, you're at work. When you're at home, you're a husband. I think that's something that it is not very common, at least from what I've seen nowadays. It's actually something that I personally struggle with, being present. So am I reading too much into that, or was there intention behind that, or is that just really who Avichail is?
I would say that I've been asked to tell people who I am. Just meeting people. They say, like, what's your name? What do you do? So, like, the question of what do you do has always got me always a little stuck. It was like, what do I do? Well, I work in an office, but I do all this other stuff. So how do I bring that in? So, like, I came up with this idea of, like, by day I work in an office, by night I do all these other stuff. The husband piece I threw in there because it was like, I'm writing my bio and I'm like, I should write like what the best thing that I do, and that is being a husband, having a wife, having a home, and running a household. I think actually though, regarding being a husband, when I was dating, and it would get far along in the dating, I would the question of, like, what do you want to be, right? Ask the kid, what do you want to be when you're older? It's like, I would be asked, what do you want to be? And the answer that I had was, I want to be a husband. I want to be a father. That's what I want to be. Everything else is just ancillary. It's just, it's how are you going to make money? Okay, I'll work in an office. It's like, obviously there are people who have these very, high ambitions to be all sorts of things. And like, they're passionate about those things. And I'm passionate about a lot of things too. I'm passionate about my music. I'm passionate about the things that I create. But what I am is a husband, and hopefully soon to be a father.
Wow. So, is that would you say that's a uniquely Jewish perspective and Jewish approach? Is it unique to you, or is it really that is the approach of the world, that my main priority in life, my main goal in life, my main role is that of being a husband?
I would say, look, all the gravestones say, father, husband, son. Our relationships, I think, is what makes us, which is, I guess, an interesting take. I would say that, I don't know if it's necessarily Jewish. I think it's when society comes to a point where we're stable and peaceful enough to, go into these little coves called the suburbs, and
Mhm.
just, if you ever like fly over, a suburb developments, it's just like 5 streets and just surrounded by houses, and it's safe, it's stable, it's almost like, humanity has brought us here, in the richest country in the world, the safest country in the world. Like, this is where the masses end up, in these collections of family homes, because that's, I think, what we like as humans. I don't know if it's uniquely Jewish.
Right. So I really do love that, because that was one of the things when dating. My personal focus, and now I've mentioned this before, that for me, I spent a year and a half preparing for marriage and preparing for dating. I didn't start dating until I felt I was prepared. And honestly, you're never really fully prepared. But I took all the classes I could. I invested thousands of dollars into understanding myself, understanding relationships, understanding marriage. But when I started dating, the approach was, my goal was to get married and to be a father, or to be a husband and then to be a father. But I knew that going into it, that was the goal. The goal was marriage. The goal wasn't just to date and to have fun. The goal was to get married, to build a family, and to create a community of our own, to create a tribe of our own. So, when you're talking about this as being like, the focus
Where
is
did you,
sorry.
may I ask, like, where did that come from?
So for me, it came from looking at the people around me, looking at the relationships I saw, specifically within my family, within my community, and looking at the world at large, and seeing that there was a lot of divorce. There was a lot of unhappy families. There was a lot of husbands that were talking poorly about their wives behind their backs, and then vice versa, making jokes. And it was something I didn't want. For me, I wanted to have something better. I
It's
knew that
so
this was not the right way to do it.
it's so interesting you say that, because I am exactly the same. As like, if someone asked me why I want to be a father and a husband and father, it's like, well, I looked at my life, and there's a lot of divorces, and there's a lot of schism and breakages, and I wanted a family that, for my own, that I can believe in and just
Right.
put all my heart and life into. So
Right.
but it's interesting, meaning, you would think that if a community does something, finds something important, then the people in the community would want to further that value. But it seems like it's almost the opposite. It's like, no, destruction actually creates the desire to construct, which is interesting.
Yeah. It's like the phoenix, right? The phoenix rises from the ashes. Well, that is the thing, is oftentimes when there is that destruction, like you said, it creates a desire for construction, but it gives us that opportunity. I think people who look at the misery of their lives and how their lives turned out, the things around them, and they submit themselves to the fact that this is my life, they're doing themselves a great disservice. It doesn't really take much it takes an immense amount of effort to get out of it. It takes an immense amount of work to break free of that. But in reality, it's not that difficult to get a hold of those resources. I mean, I worked, I made money, I found counselors, I found therapists, I found the right ones that worked for me. I found the people that I felt had good marriages and relationships. And then as time went on, I learned that some of those ones that I thought had good relationships and marriages actually didn't have good relationships as marriages. As time went on, I was able to see kind of between the cracks. But it is something that everybody can do. And I think it's something that's important for anybody who is getting ready to start dating, or anybody who's currently dating, to really evaluate for themselves where they're holding. So, you mentioned that you took the same approach. What was the not the moment, but what was the catalyst for you? And what were some of the things that you did to change the direction that your family lineage, your family legacy was going?
And I'll answer that. I just want to add, regarding what you were saying about, finding your own resources, and sort of like doing your own, what you believe in. Another thing is that sometimes your family or your community will want you to marry a certain person. And fighting against that is very difficult. And it's like, because you have to stand up to everybody. And on top of that, you don't even know if you're right. So like you're doubting, not necessarily doubting yourself, but you're not even on a solid ground. And everyone who appears to be on a solid ground is saying you shouldn't do it. It's like, you know, you're fighting against the tide. Just want to add that. Regarding your question of, you know, when I figured out that I wanted to, you know, be a father and a husband, I think I had a lot of like sort of these like popular figures. So like Jordan Peterson, I'd say, is like was a big influence. You know, when I was like my probably lower 20s, maybe 22, 23, I sort of came across him. And I know a lot of people listen to Jordan Peterson. My personal opinion is that his older stuff is better. I feel like lately he's become a bit of like, I don't know, some sort of conservative. I don't know. It's a little strange, I think, what he's become. But like his older speeches, when he was like going on lecture tours and like giving these 3-hour speeches, you know, he would talk about the man who, you know, pulls his life together, who creates a family and takes that burden and you know, really finds his essence, you know, finding what it means to be a man. And that really inspired me. I will say, though, it's interesting that, you know, a lot of his philosophy is sort of, you know, life is about taking on the burden. And also, I think together with sort of the culture and humor around marriage growing up there was a lot of like marriage would be a burden. Marriage would be, I don't know, maybe suffering is too strong of a word, but marriage would be like a very heavy weight that you sort of have to wade through. Right. And, you know, like take on this. And that was the perception I had of marriage, to the point where like I had a very strong belief that my marriage would be, you know, one that was not joyful or pleasant at all. And it would be something that I, you know, just have to like soldier through. And the fact of the matter is that I'm pleasantly surprised. It's like, whoa, marriage is like this amazing, joyful, awesome experience that it's so truly amazing. And, you know, it's like, I wish I could just tell my younger self, like, goodness is to come, you know?
Right.
So, I think, that's just an addition to your question.
People joke about the wife being the old ball and chain. And again, I might be too sensitive, but I shouldn't say never. Early on, I loved and thought those jokes were the funniest things. But then the more and more I got invested in my own marriage and the more I got invested in helping other people get married, I realized just how damaging and detrimental those jokes and those things are, because then it's programming our minds that, oh, this is what I'm expecting. And what you think is what is. So if a person is thinking that their wife is the ball and chain, is holding them back from everything, then yeah, that's exactly what they're going to get. And I've shared this story before. Recently, you know, actually in the last couple of months, a good friend of mine, we were talking and he said, listen, you want to be successful in life, listen to your wife. And so I did that. And I started, you know, because there was that old saying, happy wife, happy life. And I hated that one too, because no, you're responsible for your own happiness, which you are. But then when he reframed it as, if you want to be successful, listen to your wife. And from a perspective of Jewish philosophy or Jewish mysticism and everything that it brings down there. But when I did start listening to my wife, you know what? That's when the new job was lined up. That's when all these things started falling into place. And my life really is that much happier. It's also because I've chosen to be happier, but I'd be a fool not to admit that it started because I started listening to my wife. I put her on a higher level than myself and her opinion on a higher level of myself. And it's not saying I don't make decisions without consulting her first, because it's not her responsibility to live my life. But to hear, you know, I think in one of the videos you sent me that, by the way, for anybody listening to the show, I'm going to put in the description below links to 2 videos that Avichai has done that are brilliant, comedic, but so truthful. I mean, I was watching those and what got me, especially about the second one, the marriage one, was you had 3 different character types there. And each one, like, you come into it, you're thinking, oh, this guy is going to be the guy with all the answers. And then what you realize is each of those character types has so much truth and validity to them, and there's so much powerful information behind it. So I really appreciated it. Those were great videos.
Thank you.
And I forgot what my original train of thought was, so I'll give you time to respond at anything.
Well, actually, I do want to qualify. So like, it's true, like the about jokes being sort of like portraying marriage as this like very difficult thing. I want to qualify and say I think they're hilarious, though. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know we're talking about marriage, and I know we're just talking about detrimental jokes, but I hope you can forgive me if I remember one.
Sure.
That it was more like a real life situation. So I was in Shir. I was Gemara learning session, and my Rabbi was learning from a Chassan Shas. So it was like a nice big, Chassan Shas. So like I looked over, I'm like, wow, Rabbi, that's a really nice Gemara. That's like a really nice one. Like, I wish I could have one. And he's like, yeah, but it comes with the kala. Okay. So like when he said that, it was very funny. And right. Marriage jokes, they make me laugh, but I guess like it's sort of like believing that's the reality, I think is right. I think where I went wrong. But I do want to respond to the other thing you said. Forgot what it was. About your wife being right. So this was it was like a click for me. It was before Pesach, and we were either we were gonna like cover things like close closets or cover shelves, but there was like this one shelf that had a lot of items on it, and I wanted to put it in the closet. Like, I don't know why, I just like, we could have just covered the shelf, but like I wanted to put it in the closet, and like my wife's like, no, we'll just cover it. I'm like, no, I want to put it in the closet. So I put it in the closet, put everything in the closet. And then it was after Pesach, and I'm like, why? Like now I have to bring everything back? Why in the world did I do this? And it like clicked in my head, like I've realized when my wife is like very sure about something, it's best to like listen to her, and like she knows what she's talking about. I think the times where it's like she would follow your lead or the husband's lead, let's say, anyway, in my situation, is like when she's unsure. When she's unsure and she's looking to you for an answer, then it's not like you're right, she's right. It's just like which way, when we have two paths, which way do we go? So that's how I found that like there's a difference there.
And that's a great point, because even going back to the whole jokes conversation, one of the things I hated when I was dating and getting advice from people was the black and white answers that I was getting. It has to be this or it has to be that. The fact of the matter is, marriage and our approach to marriage is not black and white. For everybody, it's going to be different. There's going to be tweaks to the relationships that people have. For example, back on the jokes, one of the previous guests on the show, and somebody whom we are very close with, he and his wife, from an outside perspective, if you looked at the things he said about his wife, you'd be mortified, the jokes and the things he posts. But when you look and when you get to know them and you see their relationship as they interact with each other, he throws it at her, she throws it right back at him, and it's all done in love. So there's room. Again, now if I said some of those things, I would feel horrible and mortified. My wife would be, extremely upset at me for saying those things, because in our marriage, that's not how our marriage works. Now, can we make jokes about each other, towards each other? Sure. But it's also present company. It matters who are we doing this around. So nothing in marriage, or at least I've found, is black and white. There's no, this is the way to do it, or that is the way to do it. And that really does kind of wrap up with, come back to that point where you were mentioning with Jordan Peterson being the man, taking on the burden, where when it comes to making decisions, like you're saying, if your wife is sure of something, best to listen, best to follow, because chances are she knows what she's talking about. But at the end of the day, it is the husband's role. It is the man's role to lead the family from a, I guess you could call it, religious perspective, from a human perspective. I think a lot of what's going on nowadays, and this is one of those things that I'll harp on for ages, is the demasculinization of men. it's not so much about working out or if they're wearing their hair in a bun, but it really is more of the responsibility. Are they taking those burdens on, not in a depressing or depressive way, but are they taking responsibility? Are they taking ownership for their life and for their families' lives? And what are they doing about that? But at the same time, it's extremely important to make sure that we as men are making sure our needs are met, making sure that we are physically getting what we need, make sure that we are emotionally getting what we need, mentally, that we are taking care of ourselves just as much as we are there to provide and to serve for our family.
I want to comment on each thing you just said. So first of all, regarding the husband who like jokes at his wife and his wife jokes back at him, I heard another story. Forgive me.
Go for it.
I don't know who it was. My brother told me. So the husband and wife were standing before Pesach. They were burning their chametz. And the husband, and as they're burning the chametz, the husband and wife, they're standing there looking at the burning. And the husband like nudges the wife and says, "We forgot one big piece of chametz," nudging his wife. So she says, "It's okay. My father sold it to the guy years ago."
I can appreciate a good joke.
So like, I hear that, meaning if you could throw back. But I think actually it's very important what you said regarding what works for you. And I think the way you get to the place of what works for you, the way you get there requires both the husband and wife to have I believe, extreme degree of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're sort of like set in a world where I'm the husband and this is what I need, like this is what husbands need, and she is the wife and this is what wives need, it becomes very, first of all, an uncommunicative relationship. When you have to resort to like what the statistics say about what women need, that means that you're not communicating with your spouse. For example, like so in actually when my wife and I were dating, I cracked open Men Are From Mars and Women From Venus, and like, oh, marriage book, man, everyone talks about it, amazing book. And we cracked it open, and like we were reading about the very famous segment where the writer was describing when a man gets upset, he goes to his cave. And he was describing it, I don't know, for people who don't know, like, man goes to his cave and like the wife tries to like talk to him because he's in his cave, but he gets upset because he needs his cave. And if she gets too close, then he'll burn her because he's the dragon. And
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that like men need their cave. And my wife and I turned to each other and it's like, it's not at all the situation with us. In fact, it's the complete opposite. When my wife gets upset, the way she needs to deal with those feelings are she needs her time by herself. And every time I try approaching her, she burns me because it's like, no, she needs her time by herself. But if I was like, if I was like in the zone of like, no, women need to talk. They need to talk. That's how they solve their problems, by talking. Then I'm just going to be the husband who like keeps trying to talk to his wife while she just needs to be left alone. So that's what I mean. Like what you need and what you require for a marriage, that you learn what you need, is that communication, and so important, that honesty, and that like that ability to really say what you need to your spouse, or really say what you're feeling. It changes the game. It like totally changes everything. You're not guessing. There's no guesswork. You're not like resorting to statistics about men and women.
Right.
I do want to express that after getting married and after experiencing marriage, it makes me upset when I go to a marriage educator, and he says something like, he's talking to the women. He says, women, when your husband comes home, you should smile.
Right.
Like, why? What if she doesn't want to smile? And if anything, as a husband, I don't want her smiling at me if she doesn't want to smile. So like, what's the first interaction? I come home, she's smiling, she doesn't want to be smiling. I react to her smile because, oh, my wife is smiling at me. the first interaction is a lie. That's that's what you're telling couples to do when they first come home, to lie. What are you doing? Like, it's just so like, that's I don't know why marriage teachers, like, I don't know what people like. My wife and I did go. You interviewed Pam Dunn.
Yeah,
who's the head of Your Infinite Life. So Your Infinite Life has a bunch of courses. One of the courses is a couples course. My wife and I, while we were dating, actually took the couples course. And, there's a tremendous there about communication, about trust, and, about knowing how to describe what you need, knowing, what to say to your spouse, when you're feeling certain feelings. I've learned so much from that. And it wasn't a class of you should smile at your husband when he comes home. It wasn't that. It wasn't you should go on walks every Shabbos. It wasn't the women need to talk through their problems. It wasn't that. It was just, you and your spouse have a very unique dance. And you got to learn that dance. And the way you learn that dance is through communicating. It's a totally different take.
Right. So on the honesty part, when my wife and I got engaged, she was from New York, I was from California at the time. We kind of went around asking very specific people for their one piece of marriage advice. When it came to my grandparents, my father's parents, and I think we asked my grandmother one thing and we asked my grandfather something different. And we both asked them the same thing, but they gave different responses. My grandfather said, if there's number one thing that you need to do, it's you need to be honest with each other, even if it's potentially going to hurt. Because honesty, you build the foundation of your marriage off of that. If you're not going to be honest, then what is your marriage? And that was something I actually remember. There was a story, an incident that happened with my wife and I, and my feelings were hurt. And I expressed it to her after I had kind of settled down. And it's interesting because at the time I didn't know it as a skill up until today when I watched that video. But I expressed to her, I said, I feel hurt by something that happened. Can we discuss it? And then I was honest with her about the exact episode. But honesty is one of those things, and it's oftentimes it's very difficult. It's challenging because your concern as a husband is, well, I don't want to hurt my wife. I don't want to hurt my spouse. I don't want to upset her. If I tell her the truth and she's going to be upset about it, then what have I done? I just created a bigger problem. But in reality, sure, it might hurt, but there's something so much better on the other side as long as we can communicate honestly with each other. But the challenge is when somebody's getting ready to get married and when somebody's dating, you don't have these skills. These aren't things that are being taught in yeshiva and high school and seminary, and maybe in seminary a little bit, but we're not being taught how to communicate. We're not being taught. I mean, heck, for 21 years of our life, we're being told don't talk to girls, and now all of a sudden I have to go and marry one, right, and spend the rest of my life with her. How the heck am I supposed to do that? So, again, as a single, you have to educate yourself. And if you're fortunate to have had a great role models in your parents or your spouses or your siblings or whatever, not your spouses, but your siblings, then great. But if you didn't, then how are you supposed to go about that? How do you properly prepare for dating?
First of all, Baruch, that was your grandfather who told you about the honesty piece? Okay. First of all, I want to say you've made my day. Okay. Baruch, the amount of people that I have had conversations with about honesty in marriage, the Rabbanim, I've had conversations with Rabbanim about honesty in marriage. And the like rejection of this idea that there should be an open, honesty in marriage was so surprising to us that Rivka and I, we both assumed that we were just radicals regarding honesty. We thought like we have this radical opinion regarding honesty of like, well, let's be honest with each other. And no one would say that, and no one is saying that we should be honest with your spouse. So the fact that you said that, it's like, okay, we're not radical. So we have.
I'm going to add this because, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, and I'm been known to be controversial and blasphemous in my opinions of the religious organization, or organized religion. But I'm going to point out that my grandfather was actually not religious. I don't know that that necessarily has to do with anything, but I got a lot of the same advice and heard a lot of the same things that you're saying about honesty from the Rabbanim and the leaders in the Jewish community. And I have my issues with it. So just pointing out, like, it did not come from a religious source. On the contrary, it came from somebody who was not particularly religious, Jewish, but not religious. And I think that plays a big part in when we're seeking out advice. I'm not saying specifically go to people who are not religious, but be aware that there are alternative sources that are just as valid, especially if they're closer to the issue than a communal leader who's kind of looking at things from an overall 30,000-foot overview. Again, I just wanted to point that one point in, but please continue.
I would say that at least in the Jewish community, I don't know about let's say Christian communities, Christian religious community, but the Jewish religious community, there's the lore of the whole story with Avram and Sarah, right? That Sarah laughed and Hashem lied to Avram for shalom, right? For shalom. So everyone quotes that as, oh, see, you could lie for shalom, right?
Right.
Here's the thing, though. Avram didn't lie to Sarah. Hashem lied to Avram.
Right.
So, like, maybe you want to argue that a third party lying, which I don't know if I would agree with, but if you want to maybe argue that, fine. But that's a husband lying to their wife. And like, this is like, lying for shalom is like the biggest marriage hashkafa there is. Everyone quotes it. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows all the darshaning on it because it's very important. But I gotta keep track of my lies because
right.
I need to keep. It's like it's insane. I find it insane. But no. So I wanted to touch on regarding dating. And you're right about not having the necessary skills. Let's say for talking to the other sex, in dating, or just just basic, like where to go, how to act, how to dress, like that's not there. So I will say one thing, and that is you can't mess up a date if you're genuine.
Right.
If you're trying to put on a show, if you're trying to put on something else, like it's not going to work. And it doesn't matter if you bring her to, I'm like thinking of like the lowest, but a street corner. If you're genuine, she will, I'm talking to men, she will stay with you at that street corner and talk to you. If
right.
you're just genuine and you're just being yourself and you're like really you, and, it's funny because like I have a lot of different, friends from like very, very like different personalities and different, likes and things that they, that they're into. And like some of my friends are like very into the Muppets. He's very in, he likes the Muppets. He likes the Muppets. He likes Sesame Street. I don't know if he likes watching the kids shows. Like, again, like I'm not saying like he like watches kids shows and that, I'm saying like he likes the humor. And if that's what you're into, then that's who you are. And I think you should marry somebody who, I'm not saying necessarily that they should marry, that you should find somebody who likes the same thing you do, but they should
right.
at least appreciate it and see that it makes you feel joy and like appreciate that joy. If you find somebody who appreciates your joy and loves it when you're feeling joyful, loves it when you feel passionate, it's the best spouse. It's like the person who feeds your joy. That's what you should be looking for.
Absolutely. And that is something that you can experience on a date. And I'll just kind of sidetrack for 1 second, because what you just said there, you don't have to like the same things, but you have to be able to appreciate their joy. That's very similar to what the Lubavitcher Rebbe had told my father when he went in for Yechidus, a one-on-one meeting with him many, many years ago, obviously. And my father wrote him a 15-page letter asking for advice on different things. And one of the things was marriage. He was currently dating somebody. And there's actually a video from that Jem put out about this. And the advice that the Rebbe gave to my father was, when that's the right person, when you found somebody who can support your dreams, your hopes, and your desires, even if that's not what they want, and whose dreams, hopes, and desires you can support, even if it's not what you want. The point is, you don't, obviously you're living the same life, but you don't have to have everything match up 100%. As long as you can support them in what they're looking to accomplish and who they're looking to become, and they can support you in that right there it's pretty much, I wouldn't say it's all you need, but that is a great foundation for what you need, because then no matter what, you'll be able to be there for them. But as far as, genuinity, I don't know if that's a word, I'm making it a word, genuineness is concerned, then street code, right? Just make them up. We can do that. We're rabbis. It reminds me of, it was my first date with my wife. And oh my gosh, like every date I went on with anybody prior was so perfectly planned out down to the T. The only thing I didn't do was do a test run of the streets and, making sure everything worked out. But otherwise I planned everything to the T. The first date with my wife, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. I was supposed to go out with her on Sunday. Erev Shabbos, Friday, the shadchan, the matchmaker, tells me, go out Saturday night. You're there anyways. You may as well. So now I'm scrambling to find a place to go Saturday night. Who's open? I choose a place. Over Shabbos, I find out that place no longer exists. So now Saturday night, as I'm running to pick up the rental car, I have to figure out where we're going. It turns out the rental car isn't where it's supposed to be. It's the whole thing. I get into the car. It's jalopy, broken down piece of garbage. Smells like smoke and fish. Empty gas tank. Like, I'm freaking out. I go to pick up my not yet wife, but this is our very first date, and I'm showing up late, which I was like 2 minutes late, and I was freaking out. We end up going to a Starbucks because that was the only thing I was able to find, about 10 minutes away from where she lived. And I pull up to the curb and I go around to open the door for her, and I realize I just parked by a pile of trash bags. And everybody who's been to New York knows New York City streets. It's just, waist high, trash bags.
No pun intended.
Anyway, yeah, we get out of the car, we go into Starbucks, we sit down. 3 minutes into sitting down, my wife, the girl I'm dating at the time, says to me, do you mind if we go somewhere else? I can't hear you over the music that they're playing. That right there, it was pretty much that moment I knew that she was going to be the one that I was going to marry. Why? Because everybody else I had dated, first of all, I couldn't be comfortable being myself, but didn't say a peep about something that was making them uncomfortable. I had to find out from the matchmaker afterwards that they were uncomfortable because of this or that or that. She, in the first 3 minutes of sitting down, mentioned that she was not comfortable. She wanted to go somewhere else so that we could, have higher quality of time. That right there, that's her being genuine. That's her expressing her needs, her feelings. So it set us off for a right path. And it's something that, again, how many people while they're dating feel like they can do that? But like what you're saying, you can experience that in dating. You don't have to wait till marriage. You can experience joy. Most of our dates consisted of sitting in a car on Eastern Parkway for hours on end. We maybe went and did something for an hour, and then we just sat in the car and just talked. We shared funny YouTube videos. There was some duck video that she was showing me or something. I don't know, it was popular at the time. So it doesn't have to be this big extravagant thing. It really can be just spending time together, enjoying that with each other.
I say that my wife and I went on 3 dates, and the third date was our wedding.
That's awesome.
It was 3. Whatever. We went on to, we got dressed up and we went somewhere twice, but all the other dates were just walks, hiking, just if we were hungry, we get sushi. It wasn't it wasn't like setting up 8 dates, 9 dates. Oh, it's the time to get engaged. We're just being together,
Yeah, I think we broke all the rules, all the rules that they have for shidduchim, like don't do this, don't do that, like don't eat on your first date.
Right.
We pretty much threw all those out the window because it wasn't working, and you can't have those strict rules when you're trying to get to know somebody.
Right. Why do you think those rules even came to be?
It's a safety net to prevent, I think, from people from getting too emotional, too attracted to each other, crossing boundaries that they shouldn't cross. But I think a lot of it is really just it's old school way of thinking. And again, there are certain things like I agree with, yet at the same time, like for example, the first date, if you don't know each other previously, the first date, you're really just trying to see, can we be comfortable in each other's presence, which you're not really going to be comfortable because this is the first time you're meeting each other. So it's going to be awkward. So to throw into that, talk about what our kids' education is going to look like. Well, that could be a heavy topic. So that may not be something you want to do on the first date. At the same time, if she brings it up, or if he mentions it because it's coming up in conversation, you can talk about it. Like, there's no reason not to. I think it was our third date that we were already bashing the education system and we were bashing other areas and it's not because we're negative people, but it's more of like, no, we were expressing our values and things that we were interested in. There are fences there to protect us. There are fences there to make sure that everything is staying modest and it's funny because after my fourth date with her, I was speaking to somebody who was very close to me, an elderly figure in my life. And I told her, yeah, I think we love each other. And she said, oh, you guys don't love each other. You just lust for each other. And like at the time I was like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. And then the more I thought about it, like, wait, what? Like, sure, there is that element of physical attraction and a feeling of lust, but there could be a feeling of love, however you define it. So we do have to protect from the lust. We do have to protect from some of these bad things, so to speak, that could come up, preventing us from having a real relationship. At the same time, we have to trust ourselves to know what are the limitations. Like, some people can do better in certain situations and control themselves. Other people can't. So I think a lot of those rules that we have out there they were put in place as protection from doing something wrong. At the same time, we have to really examine a lot of those because a lot of them don't work. Like this thing, you have to go to a hotel lounge or lobby. Utter garbage, BS. Okay. You as the man have to choose where to go. No, I think as the man, it is your role to come prepared. But I always reached out ahead of time and said, this is what I have planned. What are your thoughts? Do you have someplace you'd rather go? And sure enough, I got into the car one time and she said, you know what? No, I'd rather go somewhere else. Great, let's go there. My whole plan's going to fall apart because we're not going where I wanted. No. Am I less of a man because she made the decision? No, I'm actually more of a man now because I showed her that this is a relationship where two people share.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say the first date, from my perspective, is the same as the scene, right? Stereotypical scene of the guys at the bar. And he sees a hot chick at the bar, goes over to her and says a pickup line, like a joke.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my estimation, is the first date. He sees if she's good looking, and she sees if he's funny. That's the first date,
right?
Because that's the most basic level of our reproductive brain. That's like the most basic level that's there. Obviously, we hope that there are more levels, of your intellect on top of there. But like the most basic level of your reproductive brain is she good looking? Is he, well, funny may be a status thing, but
right.
But right. So, there's something there. Regarding I think the restrictions that are sort of like society places. It seems to me like just societies in general. Society is like a very tyrannical thing. It's like a very you must stop at a red light. Mm-hmm. So like the state says that you have to stop at a red light, but society says if you cross a red light and nobody saw you, you're still a bad person. Because what are you doing crossing a red light? You put someone in danger. No, but no one got hurt. No one got hit. No, society says you are you're a barbarian. What are you doing? So society, even though it's not law, still has a very tyrannical effect on a person. So that tyranny is in place for good, right? Because it's not good if people are crossing red lights, even if they're not getting caught. But sometimes it's a tyranny and can go way too far. And then all of a sudden you're having bashos. Now, to get a little, I don't know who your crowd is, but I don't understand what a basho is. It's I think maybe I've heard too many horror stories. Maybe that's what it is. Like my understanding of the show is that the couple don't. I assume there's different degrees and
I've
levels, but
never
like
heard the term before.
oh no,
No.
but if my understanding is correct, Basho is usually with very ultra religious couples. Is sort of like before the Basho, the relatives of the man's side and the relatives of the girl's side get together and discuss whether it would be good for their grandchildren, nephew's son to marry, your granddaughter. They discuss it, and if all the numbers are right, then they literally have a room with a couch, and the two people come in, the man and the woman come in, and they look at each other and talk, I guess, with each other, and if everything's good, then they get engaged, and
Wow.
that's the whole dating. That's the my understanding. That is the process. Again, I assume there are different degrees and levels, but I think that's the most like basic, form of the show. It's like maybe I've just heard horror stories. It's like you're with a person for the rest of your life. You don't even know, what they're like when they're angry. You don't know what they're like when they're sad.
Right.
You don't know what they're like when they're happy. And maybe when they're happy, you don't enjoy it. Maybe it doesn't make you feel good when they're happy, and it's a very sad thing to put people together without even getting a chance to know each other. And they're so young also, 18, 19. And, and the scary part is like, I think this is the case with like a lot of, sort of like the radical parts of the religious Jewry are excused by the more moderate people because it works for them. If it
Right.
works for them, it's like, I don't know, what are their divorce rates? The divorce rates are less than the Litvish, so they may get some, maybe probably get something less than the, I don't know, Chabad, but like they get some. I don't know, it works for them.
So, but that's the thing is these things that did work and had worked don't necessarily work anymore. And it's not for me to say that somebody's doing something right or wrong, but the fact of the matter is, just because people aren't getting divorced doesn't necessarily mean that that's a good marriage. Like my opinion of divorce has changed drastically over the years. I used to be, I was adamantly against it, and if you got divorced, there was something wrong with you. I used to be that I would say, no, you absolutely must work it out. And the only thing that in my book was okay for you to get divorced from was because if there was actual abuse. As time has gone on, I'm learning more and more that no, that there are other circumstances where divorce is necessary, but it's an okay, or it's the right step to take, and it's not just if there's physical or verbal or emotional mental abuse, that there are other reasons for it. And just because something doesn't mean that is the way it needs to be or should be.
Would you share like an example or something of like as a reason to get divorced?
So I'm still working on it, because for me, when I started dating and I got married, I made a promise to myself and to my wife, but to myself, that divorce was not an option, that I would do whatever it takes to make sure that I remain married. I had seen too many divorces in the community, people I knew. Some of them were valid reasons. Somebody hiding like a medical condition that was a serious medical condition and would really alter lives of the people they were, the person they were married to, as well as their kids. And then I'd seen silly things like a year into marriage, after the wife had given birth, the guy's like, well, she's no longer the person I married. She doesn't look the same and she doesn't act the same. Well, no, she doesn't look the same and act the same because she literally grew a child within her body, gave birth, and now her hormones are out of whack because it has an effect on you. To me, she changed. Well, does she change? That to me is not a valid reason without doing real work. Now, if there was psychological things, something else going on there, sure, that's a whole separate discussion. But even something, and I'm not fully comfortable with this idea just yet, but if if a person, one part of the couple is working on growing and becoming better, growing themselves, reaching their next level, and the other person in the couple simply is not, is that grounds for divorce? I'm moving my life forward, they're not. On the one hand, you could say yes, because our life goals are no longer the same or similar. We're no longer heading in the right direction, the same direction. I'm committed to improving and growing, but they're not. On the other hand, can you force somebody to change? Can you force somebody to grow? I think what needs to happen first is there has to be open, honest communication. You have to try and work it out before utilizing divorce as an option. I think as a baseline rule, as much as I'm not into black and whites, there has to be some form of effort put into remaining married together, remaining together. Again, abuse and things like that are completely, if it's an abusive relationship, get out. But if it's more of, okay, we're not living our best life together, that's when I think there's potentially grounds for it, but work needs to be done first. If the other person is not willing to come to the table to discuss that, so now it's a discussion of, okay, well, what is the impact this is going to have on my life? What is the impact it's going to have on my kids? Because at the end of the day, I don't think that divorce is something that should just be thrown into like, okay, well, that's it. We're not heading the same direction, so I'm out. Because there's ramifications. And again, at the same time, and I'm kind of going here in circles. At the same time, though, I don't think a person should remain in a marriage if they're miserable. So it's not an easy topic. And again, obviously, it's not something I've fully come to terms with. And I don't think I ever really will come to terms with it, because at the end of the day, it's a heavy subject. It's something big.
But you're actually reminding me, or like you're making me realize, like before I was talking about like marrying the person that you want to marry might be an uphill battle, where you're fighting other people who don't think that they're for you. It's interesting that getting divorced is similar. You're met with that similar, like, why are you getting divorced? Is there abuse? No, there's no abuse. So then why are you getting divorced? You must be selfish. It must be for selfish reasons. And look, it's just so interesting because it's like it's sad on either side when the person doesn't have, an independent choice and a life of their own, and a life that they themselves can call their own. Anytime that's squashed, it's sad. It makes me feel sad. It's like, it's, yeah, but also now it's just making me think like even more like, there's something about like the human spirit that can't be crushed. It could be layered. Your community, your family could like push it down and layer it. But it's, the story of the pea, the princess and the pea. Yeah. It's like the princess is trying to sleep, but she feels something like a bump on her mattress, and she keeps trying to put mattresses on, but she just still keeps this bump. Why? Because that the soul, that essential human being, that spirit is that pea, and it's never going away. No matter what marriage you're in, no matter how many kids you have, no matter what culture you're in, no matter what community you are, that soul is going to be calling out, and it's going to be there your whole life. And that the princess couldn't sleep. And it's the same. You can't live if that spirit is not just let out. So like, imagine living a whole life where that spirit is kept down there, and you can't, it's like having endless sleepless nights. That's what it really is. It's a terrible situation.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's why I think one of the most generic pieces of advice I ever heard, or pieces of dating advice I heard, was essentially, in order to get married, you have to create a life for yourself. It's two people that have their own lives that are coming together to create a joint life, but you have to have your own life, and she has to have her own life. And now you're coming together to create, one unit, but you're still living your own lives. If you don't have a life, then what are you getting married for? Like, why are you getting married? Just to bring somebody else into a miserable life? Now it's not always that easy. And I think, but what you're, referencing here and what you're saying, or at least what it's sparking within me, is this idea that it's gone. I just lost it. It was something having to do with divorce, but it slipped out of my mind. But say something.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt your thought, Baruch. But I think I disagree. I mean, or at least I would make an amendment. I would say that there could be the person whose life is to be, one with their spouse. That is their life. Basar echad. That it's funny. Like through all the marriage, in all the marriage courses, they like sort of give basar echad, just for background, is when God created Adam, he created Chava. He introduced Chava to Adam as, this is you're going to cleave. You're going to become one unit with this, other being, a basar echad. And whether that means that you should be needy and like you shouldn't ever let your spouse leave the house, and that you can't let your spouse have their friends. I don't think that's basar echad. I would say basar echad, though, is a effort to try to get your minds to be one. And that's why it's like sort of stereotypically romantic when the couples finish each other's sentences, because there's a completion, there's a unit, it's a oneness, and it's sort of like symbolic of their relationship. I would say like being a husband and that being your life, being a father and that being your life, I think is a beautiful thing.
But can that be everything? I mean, I know we touched upon at the beginning, like that was your bio. But there's more to obvious. It's not okay, but I hate the word but. Yes. However, so we are husbands, right? And that is our greatest role. What makes somebody want to marry us? Just for us and our presence? If I'm coming to the table and I'm saying, well, I'm a man, I can be a husband, marry me, what value is there in that? Is there not more value in me being a put together person who maybe I don't have all the plans set out, but I know that my direction is this direction. I'm going in this direction. I'm not talking necessarily professionally, but my goal in life, I want to have an impact. I want to create a family and raise a family who have these values, these morals, these ethics. I'm not necessarily saying, again, that all this has to be figured out ahead of time. But does a single guy or a single girl need to show up with something to offer other than themselves? Or are you saying that they themselves, they are enough, because now we become that joint unit? Which, by the way, I agree with you. There's immense validity and there's power in that. And my wife had this thing where it's weird telepathy where I'll mention something, hey, we should do this. And she's like, I was just thinking about that. And it's been going on for too long with too many different variety of things for this to be like a planned prank. So there's definitely what to there, that, we are so in sync with each other. But do we need to show up as single guys, single girls? Do we need to show up with more than just ourselves, or really no, just ourselves? We are enough.
I would say that it's good, but it's not necessary. And I would bring a proof actually from our conversation. You were mentioning that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said to your father to find someone who appreciates your dreams and hopes, but doesn't necessarily want that. Right? I think that gives credence to the idea that, right, when I'm looking for a spouse, I don't need them. I want, like, I'm ready to appreciate them. I ready to appreciate their love, their dreams and their hopes, but I don't necessarily need their dreams and hopes. I want them. I want them as a wife. I want their love and their care and their everything, But right. So I wouldn't say that it's necessary. I think it's good, but I wouldn't say it's necessary.
And as for the individual themselves, like me as an individual, do I need to have what I'm working towards? before bringing a spouse into the picture?
I don't know, again, if that's necessary. I think that just might be part of our nature. We strive for some sort of immortality, and maybe we think that our passions will make us live beyond.
Mhm.
I would say I don't think for the individual. Again, I think it's the same idea. It's good, but I don't know if it's necessary. But one second, there was something you mentioned that I wanted to comment on. Forgot what it was. So yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot what it was.
No, if it comes up again, then just interrupt me.
Okay.
So one of the questions that was actually submitted when I posted that this would be the topic, and it kind of ties in now to what we're saying is, when is a person ready to date, and how do you know who to date? So up until now, I've always said, you're ready. You're never really ready to date, but you're essentially ready to date when you feel like, okay, there is something missing from my life, and the only thing that can fill that hole, to fill that gap, is another person, is my spouse. And that was something I definitely experienced. I'd pretty much done everything I could up until that point, and I wanted somebody to share my life with. That was for me as to when, who to date was very much in line with the advice that the Rebbe had given my father, was somebody who would support me and whom I could support. But I would definitely love to hear your thoughts on this, especially as it kind of goes into this whole discussion we're having now.
I would say that if you're asking the question of when is a person fit to date, I'd say you're ready to date. I find that the people who are, I wouldn't say not ready to date, I would say like not looking to date, don't even think about dating. It's just not part of their psyche. So if it's part of your psyche, then I think you're ready. Right, Baruch, I understand that you did a lot of preparation and self-growth for dating, and it's amazing, and I think that's very praiseworthy. I think that I think the one piece is being genuine. I think if you have honesty and genuineness, authenticity, right? If you have
all the buzzwords,
right? If you have that, then again, does it mean you're not going to be hurt? No, you will be hurt. We're human beings. Does it mean you're not going to make mistakes? No, you will make mistakes. Does it mean, right? Are you going to be perfect? No, but you will be authentic. You will be yourself. You will be who you really are, and stick to that. There's a like life tries to knock you off of that, and especially growing up. I'll admit, growing up, I was a liar. I lied. I lied about things I've done. Lied about who I am. I've covered over. I lied a lot, and it was like, and it's almost like when I said that I will not lie anymore. I will say the truth. I will not say lies. At first, life will present you with many opportunities to lie, and it'll be very difficult. But sort of like if it becomes a habit, then you'll see you're comfortable. Like imagine like not having to keep in your head all the calculations of all your lies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like funny because like for me, I would say I was a serial liar. It's like it was so much. Like which friends did I say what to, and like I gotta know. It's like you're not at peace.
Right.
But when you're honest, you're at peace. You don't have to. You're just you. You're just everything you say is what you really feel. It's a totally different life. And what the second question was,
how do you know who to date? Or how do you determine who to date?
I mean, what do you want? Like if you want a certain person who's a certain age, right? Or a person who looks a certain way. I'd say like the initial inquiry is going to be surface stuff, like, right? the initial inquiry of like, I want to date. Who should I date? First question is going to be, how old is she? Do you want to date someone who's 75? Not that there's anything wrong. But like you have to determine like surface stuff, which again is the first date. The first date is she, am I attracted to her? Or for a girl, does he make me laugh? Which is very important, by the way.
Mhm.
I would say advice to guys is to create a sense of humor for yourself. It doesn't have to be a specific sense of humor. Even, I remember I was talking to a few guys who were a few years younger than me, and they were going to start dating. I was like, just make jokes.
Mhm.
Just like, I don't know, say the moon looks like a pumpkin. Just be funny. Women like it.
Yeah. So it sounds like those two things really do go hand in hand. It's when to date is when you're able to be you, and who to date is the person that can accept you for being you.
Yeah.
It reminds me of
amazing.
my very first date I actually had with somebody. And I tell the story all the time, but in short, we get in the elevator to go up to the rooftop bar, and on the floor of the elevator there's this squishy mat with like watering colors and stuff in it. Like, oh, that's cool. So I started pushing on it, and I'm having a blast because I was told the advice I was given is be you and make her laugh. So I thought that stone cold, no reaction whatsoever. We get out onto the rooftop lounge. There's a circular couch. It's kind of like a yin yang, there's a little back that goes in the middle. And I sit down and it starts spinning. I'm like, oh, cool. And I spin around twice. Stone cold. It was pretty much solidified from that point on that this was not going to be somebody I was going to be able to pursue further. We ended up going out on one more date. It was completely botched date because nobody told me don't take your date bowling on the second date. Apparently that's a bad idea, which I discovered the hard way. And I got lost trying to find the next place to go because that whole date lasted 30 minutes and we just shared maybe 5 words. And as I got lost, I'm trying to make light of the situation. And again, stone cold shut down, didn't say anything to me. And I understand that there's nerves and whatnot involved, but it showed that, okay, if I'm trying to make light, I'm trying to be happy, cause laughter and be myself, and the person isn't receiving me for who I am, then it wasn't going to work. So, I think that it touches upon what you were saying there.
It's so interesting. I want to comment on each thing you said. Regarding this girl, that you dated who was stone cold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine she was gorgeous. Imagine like you thought she looked so freaking hot, right? Would you ever say no? So I think that's where like what we're talking about before with like the lust, like when it's lust and
right.
Like you should, the restrictions in order so that lust doesn't get all caught up, right? This is a perfect situation because like imagine if she was like the hottest thing and like, but she was not the person for you, then
right.
You're completely blinded.
Yeah.
I want to also say on my first date, my first shit-off date, it was we go to a hotel lounge. That's what they said to go. So I went to hotel lounge. I remember, first of all, I came in, I got like dressed up to the nines, but like my nines were not other people's nines. So like I had like military boots on. I had like a blue hat, like there's a blue suit and like ironed everything. Like I look like a soldier, honestly, because with the military boots, really. So like I'm sitting there. First I go to like meet her parents, and like the chair, it was like leaning back a little bit, or like it was very high, but the chair was very high, but my knees were like in the air. So like my knees are like over here. I'm like looking over my knees with this. So my pants like comes out and like my boots are there. It was a hilarious sight, I'm sure, for them. But then, so we go to hotel lounge, and like in the middle, we were just talking. I don't know what we were talking about. We were talking about like a mullick or something. I don't even know. And all of a sudden,
soft topic for a first date.
Yeah. I don't know why we're talking about a mullick, but all of a sudden, my shoulders like stiffen up, and I couldn't move. I was nervous. It was anxiety. I don't know what it was. I was just like stiff like this for like 15 minutes. Couldn't turn my head. I was just like stiff.
Wow.
That was a disaster.
Yeah.
And then regarding you made another point that I want to make and maybe I should write things down.
It's late,
Yeah. When are we going till?
Go for another 5 minutes or so. We'll wrap
5
up.
minutes? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so another thing that was submitted is somebody asked about rejection. How do you handle rejection? How do you protect from, take care of rejection?
I remembered what I wanted to say, and it actually is related to this question. So, the advice, be yourself, right? I want to quantify that.
Mhm.
What does it mean to be yourself? Okay. Went out with a girl, and this is not the rejection part. It's going to come a little later. But I went out with a girl, and we were talking, and like I was asking her, like, what do you do besides work? So she says she watches TV, eats fast food, and other things. And I dropped her, I dumped her
Mhm.
because of that. I was like, I don't want to go out with somebody who, just does those things. Or like, what are you wasting your time or something, whatever. And then I remember it was like a few nights later, I sort of like, it's like that light bulb. And I actually faced myself in the mirror. And I pointed at myself and I said, that's you. That's what you
Wow.
do. You just go to work, come home, watch TV, and eat fast food. That's all you do. And it was just like, it was such a eye open. It was like, whoa. So when the advice of be yourself, it's face yourself.
Mhm.
Who are you? What do you do? And if you don't like that, if you would reject somebody who does those same things, then maybe become someone or become
Right.
someone that you like. So that's really, I would say be yourself. That's what it is. And now regarding rejection, so I remember I dated one girl, and she was not the girl for me. It would not have worked. It would have been a disaster if we got married. And thank goodness she was the one with the brains. And she was the one who broke it up. Thank goodness. Like, it's weird because like she dropped me and I was very upset about it. But like, and we haven't spoken since. But like, I would thank her. I would be like, thank you so much for like making the decision for us because you've just saved my life. Like,
Right.
But I remember after she dropped me, I went in a very dark downward spiral and I was very depressed for like 2 weeks. Very, very depressed. And there was really a point where it was a bit of a tipping point. And I knew that when I hit that tipping point, that I better get help.
Mhm.
And I got a therapist and I had a few sessions with the therapist. And it really was very helpful because it made me realize that she's not all who I am. It's not like my life is over if I don't have her. Who I am, what are my passions, what do I truly enjoy? Those are the things that I can that are me and that I could tap into. And but that was a very dark place after that rejection. So I would say, like, if you were rejected and you feel really, down in the dumps, it's if it's really bad, obviously get help. And if and maybe it can make you realize that you're really more than, a person who dropped you.
Right.
You're more than that. And tapping into those things, doing the things that you're passionate about, and I'm not, like I said before about TV, watching TV. If you're passionate about TV, that's great. I'm an active watcher. Like,
Mhm.
like some people like watch, like sort of like as they do other things. I cannot. I must like listen to every line, every frame. Like I'm studying, like, why did he say that? He shouldn't have said that, trying to predict the next lines, like looking at if you're passionate about that, that's amazing. That's great. I would say maybe do something with that. Write video essays or make a video essay. Like there's so many things you can do with that. Be a commentator. And it's actually when you're passionate about something, writing about it helps you organize your thoughts regarding the passion. So just writing about it really helps.
Wow. So there's two things there that you brought up that I'll kind of wrap this point up with. One is my way of getting through the rejection. Every time I went out with somebody and they said no to me, because I was very blessed and fortunate that of the 4 people I dated before my wife, they all said no to me and I didn't have to say no to them. But one of the things that I did to get through it was, what can I learn about myself from this? What can I learn about dating? And what can I learn about what I want from a spouse? And by doing that, it wasn't a waste of time and it wasn't a waste of money. It wasn't a failed experiment. I actually gained something from this. So I was able to elevate myself. Now that ties into the second thing, which is get help. Especially if you're in such a place as having depression from it, but in general, just having those people, especially as we mentioned before, there are people who are going to tell you that you're not ready to get married, or you need to marry this type of person, or how dare you get divorced. In life, you need to have what I call the board of directors for life. The people who are there, who know what's best for you, they want what's best for you, and they will help you do that, even if it's challenging. But you have to have those advisors. You have to have those people who are in your corner to be there to support you. And it's not something you're going to find right away. And those people will change, but it helps to have them, especially during dating, but it's extremely important to have in general. Now it is late, so I do want to wrap up. So we're going to finish off with our last 2 questions. Before we do, I want to thank you again for joining, and of course for staying as long as you have. The final 2 questions.
Thank you for having me on.
Very welcome. It was my honor, really. Final 2 questions are like this. Question number 1, if there's one message that you want to give to people, it could either be specifically about dating and marriage, one piece of advice, whatever it may be, or about life in general, what would that be?
Again, piece of advice?
Piece of advice or like a message that you want people to know?
A message. I've said it so many times during the podcast, but I'll say it again. It's honesty. Honesty is it's everything. It's real. It's realness. Honesty, because also I don't know where the word honesty comes from. Probably from some Latin word, but I'm sure it's related to just, you want to live reality. You want to be in reality. Being honest is reality. That's reality. And anything but honesty is you're not here.
Yeah. And that's honesty in all areas of life, not just in relationships.
And don't lie.
Marriage.
Don't lie. Be honest with yourself, with your spouse, with your friends, with your siblings. You'll be if you're a person who's not used to that and is covers who they are, and if you take on this trait of honesty, it'll change the world. People will notice about how you've just completely changed and just become a better, amazing person. It's an amazing thing.
Excellent. And then the final question, as we wrap up every show with, what is one conversation that you think more people should be having? So choose anyone. I don't ask easy questions on the show.
Yeah. I mean, I do wish people were talking about that essential human spirit that can't be crushed. And, I think if more people were talking about that, I think it would be a growth spurt for culture and society, because it's sort of validating that each person has their human spirit that can't be crushed. And it's sort of recognizing each person for themselves. That's what the person is. It's their spirit. That's who they are. So almost like, I think if we're starting to have conversations about how covered it is in some circumstances, and about its resilience, I think it would be very beneficial.
Welcome to the conversation.